Hi, today we're looking at section 5.1, which is combining functions graphically. Now, in your workbook, this is one of the sections that's labeled as a math lab, so it's mostly designed for you to work through on your own and then find some patterns. So I'll go through one example question, and then you will be working through this stuff on your own. So essentially, this section deals with combining functions using the graphs. And essentially, we'll be dealing with addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division with those functions. So for example, given the graphs of y equals f of x and y equals g of x, we're on a graph y equals f of x plus g of x, y equals f of x minus g of x, y equals f of x times g of x, and y equals f of x divided by g of x. So what I'll start by doing is create a multi-column table of values. So we'll start with just our x and y on each of our original graphs. So we've got x, our black graph was f of x. So we'll get our coordinates from it first. So at -2, we were at 4. -1, we were at 1. 0, we were at 0. 1, we're at 1. 2, we were at 4. Now we'll get the y values for this blue graph, which is g of x. Now we'll get those points at the same x values. So at -2, we were at -2. -1, we were at -1. 0, we were at 0. 1, we were at 1. 2, we were at 2. Okay, so our first graph is f of x plus g of x. So how we'll come up with our new y values is simply add our old y values for each of those original functions. So we have 4 plus -2, which would be 2. 1 plus -1 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 1 plus 1 is 2. 4 plus 2 is 6. So now we'll plot our original x with our new y. So at -2, we are at +2. -1, we're at 0. 0, we're at 0. 1, we're at 2. And then at 2, we are at 6. So we can see we essentially have something that looks like another parabola here. Okay, so our next one, we've got f of x minus g of x. So do the same thing, go back to our original functions and do subtraction. So we've got 4 minus -2, so that'd be 6. Then we have 1 minus -1, so that's 2. 0 minus 0 is 0. 1 minus 1 is 0. 4 minus 2 is 2. So this looks like it will probably be another parabola. So -2, we're at 6. -1, we are at 2. 0, we're at 0. 1, we're at 0. And 2, we're at 2. It looks like we have a parabola that looks something like this. Okay, so next we have f of x times g of x. So now we're going to be multiplying these. So 4 times -2 is -8. 1 times -1 is -1. 0 times 0 is 0. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 2 is 8. So at -2, we are down at -8. 1, we're at -1. 0, we're at 0. 1, we're at 1. 2, we are at 8. So when we plot this, we notice that it looks like a cubic function. Okay, so we're on to our last function, which is f of x divided by g of x. So we'll divide our f of x by g of x. So 4 divided by -2 would be -2. 1 divided by -1 would be -1. 0 divided by 0 we can't do because we can't divide by 0. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So at -2, we are at 2. -1, we're at 1. 0, we don't have a value. Then 1, we're at 1. 2, we're at 2. So essentially, we have a linear function that is going to have a hole at 0. Look like this. So like I mentioned, this section you are being given essentially 2 graphs, and then you'll be added to add them or subtract them or multiply them or divide them. And as you do that, look through to see what patterns of what types of graphs you're getting when you're doing the different mathematical operations.